I'm Connie Kuber with Sealpro Silage Barrier Film by Connor AgriScience. And today we're talking on this dairy business video with John Ellsworth, who is the owner of Success Strategies. Thank you for coming to visit with us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation, Connie. Thank you.
Well, it's very interesting. John and I had planned on doing this video for quite some time, and today is February 24th, 2022. And last night, the Russian government invaded the Ukraine, the country of Ukraine. So we're trying to wrap our head around what kind of issues will come of that for our dairy industry. So let's start out with first, give just a short background, John.
Okay. Actually, I started Success Strategies a little over 23 years ago. I was told at the time that there was really no need for it, but somehow we've stayed pretty busy helping clients to benefit from the services we offer to help them keep on track financially, build a better future plan, a better business plan for themselves. And it's not just about writing things down, but rather it's opening up your thinking as a producer, for example. And today we work with a lot of dairy producers, but we also do some work in the almond industry and the wine grape industry. But regardless of what the industry is, including my own business, planning is just is very beneficial to people. And I think if there's something we've offered people, it's helping them to stabilize their operation financially and then set some objectives and goals for themselves that they may not have even thought about. Because sometimes, as the saying goes, when you're up to your neck in alligators, it's easy to forget that the objective was to drain the swamp when you're out in the middle of it. So, and I think we can all get caught in that. But I've enjoyed the 23 years of working with people. I have a really solid clientele right now, and as we normally have. But there's some challenges. 2022 is going to be an interesting year, and I've said that several times. And not trying to be a smart aleck, but the longer this year goes on, the more I'm becoming correct on that statement. There's going to be some interesting and somewhat different challenges perhaps than we had thought even at January 1. But that gives you a little background. I mostly work on the West Coast, but I have clients in Washington, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, and California. California is my biggest concentration, and dairy producers at least. And so love the industry, love the people in it, and it's been a great ride for us.
So with that, let's start with talking about the income side of the dairy and talk about milk prices. Where do you think that's going to go?
Well, I mean, right now, the way it looks right now, we're seeing the highest prices we've seen maybe forever, but certainly since 2014's high prices. But I hope that doesn't take people off of their game plan, because the milk prices, I mean, I love the milk prices being high too. Typically, and probably just like your company, Connie, you probably get paid a little faster, and we all appreciate that, of course, even the dairymen do. But I think we don't want to lose our focus on what really matters in the business. And that is, there's a revenue side, which looks really good right now, but there's also an expense side. And as you well know, dairymen are getting clobbered right now on feed prices. And what happened in Ukraine last night and early this morning, and throughout the day, I'm sure today, will complicate things even more, because I didn't realize this till a couple of weeks ago, that the Ukraine produces, I think it's 13 to 15% of all the corn and wheat in the world's supply. And while we're not necessarily in the US getting corn and wheat from the Ukraine, if the people that are buying that, the countries that are buying that, can't access that feed, as I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be driving a truck through Ukraine right now, or running a train car either. But I think they've got to get it from somewhere else, which puts upward pressure on prices that our U.S. producers, our Canadian producers are going to face, and that's going to be a challenge. So that's going to be a scary situation if you're not contracted. And we also have the logistical issues, at least in the U.S., and I assume they're having some of those in Canada as well, because it's not only having it contracted, but getting it to you is becoming somewhat of a challenge. But on the milk price front, you asked about that. I think this looks really positive. Hopefully, this war front issue that's going on in the Ukraine doesn't impact that in a negative way. And in fact, it could drive prices even higher. Who knows? But I like to tell producers that there's never a bad time, especially when prices are high like are right now, to maybe get some things locked in using puts. So you basically put a floor under your milk price, but we're not, if prices come in higher, you'll lose the premium, which is, 30 cents a hundredweight, 35 cents a hundredweight, but it's a lot better to have that insurance. I jokingly say this with people. I don't call my insurance guy up at the end of the year when my house didn't burn down and complain about having paid the premium. I'm glad the house didn't burn down. I'm also glad that I'm covered if, in fact, it did burn down or something damaging happened to it. So I think that's kind of the way we need to look at these puts, to put a floor under milk prices as well.
Okay, right. And what about other income like dairy, beef, heifers?
Well, you know what, I think regardless of where a producer is located, whether it's Wisconsin, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, wherever you are, California, I spend a lot of time there with producers, so I'm more in tune with what they can diversify with. Things like almonds. I have some clients that grow grapes, wine grapes. And I think there are a lot of opportunities due to the weather and the opportunity, long growing season, to do a number of different things and diversify their income. But on the flip side, I think no matter where you are, I have a friend that's not far from Kansas City where I live, and he diversifies his operations by plowing snow in the wintertime. So, do I want to go out and plow snow? Not necessarily, but it's just a silly example, I think, of there's always a way to look to diversify no matter what your business is. And so I think you got to be open to those opportunities.
What about, let's go back to the cost side of things.
Sure.
Labor costs and those kind of issues. Where do you see that going?
Well, we know several things with almost absolute certainty. Number one, the price of labor is going to go higher. I just released today a blog and video on our website at successstrategies.com that talks about the Great Resignation. And if you do any reading in business publications at all, people will be seeing and hearing about this. It's just basically a movement of people who are saying, employees are saying, is this what I want to do the rest of my life? Or maybe even in addition to that, is this the kind of conditions I want to work in? And I'm not putting anybody down as an employer. It's just that seems to be the general trend, particularly with younger people. They're saying, gosh, I see how hard, I see how this has turned out for some people. Is this what I really want? And I'm not judging them in their questioning. I'm just saying that's part of the Great Resignation. People are saying, you know what? I'm tired of this. If I don't get paid more, I'm going to leave. And a lot of them have and are in the process of doing that now. I think that's a challenge we need to recognize as employers. I feel very blessed with the team that I have at Success Strategies. I've been very fortunate. The people that are with me have been with me not for 27 years because some of them aren't that old, but we've got a good team of people who've been with us 10, 15, 18 years. And I feel very fortunate with that. And so, but I think that's going to be a challenge for dairy producers. I think it has already been a challenge. I recall several clients in the last 2 or 3 years just constantly interviewing people. And there are some solutions. And if you go read that blog, I give some proposed solutions. Automation is one of them. That's not helping the employee necessarily, but it's helping the employer. Training people. I think people are looking for a path where they know what their future path is going to be. That's a big thing. And if we do some training with people, I think we also can benefit from having them stay around and feel like they're more valued. They know their specific role. They know what they're supposed to be doing. And I think that's not an expense. I consider that an investment. And we've tried to do that with our own people. So, and some of them on our team do things that, frankly, I'm not capable of doing because it's tech related or something of that nature. And I appreciate their efforts in those areas.
Yes, and yeah, in that blog, I read that today and or listened to it today on LinkedIn. And one of the favorite things that you had said of mine was that you should you train somebody and then go have them leave, and you had said something to the effect of that. What would you rather do?
That's one of my favorite stories from when I worked in the banking industry. A manager, and I love this manager. He was a fabulous leader. He was a great person to work with. He was very supportive. But I remember when Excel was first introduced, and our younger members of the audience today probably don't even remember. That's probably all they've ever used. But we used to use things like WordPerfect instead of Word, and we used something called SuperCalc. There were a couple other programs before Excel came along. And I remember talking to my manager at that time, and I said, I like the looks of these programs, but we need some training in this. And he looked at me and he said, John, our margins are so thin, and we just can't afford that, because there's nothing worse than training people and having them leave. And I just kind of scratched my head for a minute and I said, well, I think there's one thing worse, isn't there? And he said, what on earth could that be? And I said, not training them and having them stay, because anybody that's run a milk barn, anybody that's run a feed program knows that if people don't know what they're doing necessarily, or not optimizing those, especially with software today, you can be so much more efficient, so much more effective, and help the dairyman be more profitable. But you have to know what you're doing. It's not the same as it was 20 years ago. And I think every producer listening knows that, of course. So I think that's the basis of my comments. I still do this. I'll never forget that story, because he set me up so perfectly to, not to embarrass him, of course, but rather help him realize that there was more. And there's a good ending to the story in that we did train the staff, including myself and him. And I think we all benefited from it. And I think the bank did as well.
Sure. Well, you do have a very interesting blog. And I know another one of my favorites is one about attitude and playing all 4 quarters. Can you talk about that just a little bit, and we'll round up with that?
Sure. Well, I think as far as attitude goes, and believe me, I'm preaching to the choir here, because I have a bad attitude at times too. I think we all do. When we get frustrated, we get overwhelmed with circumstances. When we wish we had contracted something at $300 a ton, and now it's $460 a ton because of the Ukraine conflict and things like that. We all could have some challenges in attitude, but I guess when I'm gone, I'd like people to remember me for having a good attitude, not a negative attitude, because it's so much easier to have a negative one, of course, and be growling at everybody. But really, if you want a good team around you, you can't be doing that, because we all need encouragement. And I think that having a good attitude fits right along with that. And I think the the article that I did about playing all four quarters. Ask anybody that's played a football game or watched a football game. The playoffs had been going on not terribly long ago. And when a team was ahead by 20 points at halftime and didn't finish out very well, in fact, lost the game, that's a sad situation. That's a good example of you got to play all four quarters. And those teams that made the comeback, they were behind 20 points at halftime and they came back and won it. They literally played all four quarters. And from the standpoint of keeping our bankers happy, you know, they're as a group of people, they're wonderful people. Some of them might be surprised that I would say that about them because typically I'm working on the other side of the table with the client. But overall, they're a great group of people. And contrary to popular opinion, the last thing on God's green earth that they want is to own your farm. They do not want to run your farm. They want to finance your farm, your dairy. And I think they have rules that they have to live within. But I think in a sense, they serve two masters. They have to protect the assets of the bank, which is the money they're lending to you as a dairy producer. But at the same time, they don't want you to fail because if they make a loan and it goes bad, that's a very costly process for the bank. And the reserves that they have to put against those potential losses, a total write-off situation, that is a horrible thing for a bank financially from a profitability standpoint. It's very costly. So they want you to succeed. But I think one of the things we've tried to instill in people's minds over the last 23 years is that the more we can do to keep the banker in the loop in terms of reporting, giving them good factual information, telling them what our objectives are, taking them on a tour of your dairy. I've yet to meet a banker that didn't, even if they were new to the dairy industry, that didn't enjoy walking around, learning, hearing what a producer is aspiring to do in a given year. And I think that's pretty exciting. And you got to remember as a producer that the loan officer is your conduit to senior management and the final approvals for your loans. And he or she is your salesperson, so to speak, selling, why should we do this herd loan, feed line, real estate loan, whatever it is, equipment loan. And so we have to equip him or her with every bit of good information that we can possibly get in their hands, not to overwhelm them, but to give them the material they need to do the write-up to get the loan approved, because they're not there every day, just as I'm not as a consultant. I can't be there every day. So it's getting the right information, good information to people is key, and what we like to call one of our success strategies, actually.
Well, thank you. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the Ukraine situation. We've talked about milk prices and other income. We've talked about feed costs and labor issues, and touched on having the right attitude and showing those bankers that you have the right attitude, that you're doing the best you can on your farm. So I really appreciate you spending your time with us today, John.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
We've been working with John Ellsworth here today at Success Strategies. And what is your website, John, if they want to go find out more?
You can go to www.success, hyphen or a dash, whichever you prefer to call it, strategies.com. And that's the best way to get them. So actually it's right behind my head, except there's a hyphen in between success and strategies. And
very good.
That'll get them there. And
okay. And you have a very strong presence on LinkedIn as well.
I try to.
Yes.
I enjoy it. It's a nice business network, and I find it's very positive in a lot of ways. Yes.
Right. Well, thank you very much. This is Connie Kuber for DairyBusiness.com and Sealpro Silage Barrier Film. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.